Welcome back, Warriors, to another Battlefield 2042 video. I'm your commanding officer, Major Doodleman149, and in today's briefing I'll be going over the developer update we received from HQ on the 10th of November. There's a number of things that the brass addressed in this update, including getting new recruits to the field, future operations beyond Season 4, the return of classes, new weapons, and some new maps. All of these things are being touted as coming with Season 3 later this month, a full year after launch. I'll be going over each item and what detail is available, as well as providing my usual, objectively correct opinions on the matter. Let's get into this. The brass has realized that the number of enlisted men and women in this conflict is not great. As a result, they are allowing civilians to enlist without having to pay this enlistment fee. The caveat with this is that their deployments will be limited and short-lived, thankfully trying not to shit on the currently enlisted men and women of this conflict. As such, if you're interested in deploying yourself for free, you have the opportunity. If you want to deploy on the Xbox rig, you'll be able to freely deploy between the 1st and 4th of December, 4 whole days. If you're on a PC rig, you are free to access between the 1st and 5th of December, 5 days. Now, if you're on a PlayStation rig, you can freely deploy between the 16th and 23rd of December, 8 whole days. Now, this is beside the point, but why the fuck do PlayStation soldiers get to have literally twice as long of a deployment as compared to other platforms? DICE, get off your knees and get Sony's cock out of your mouth. It's embarrassing. Now, after that short outburst, there's also mention made of post-Season 4 content being in development by HQ. In typical HQ fashion, they are being purposely vague about what this means. All they've confirmed is that there is something after the end of their obligatory 4th season of deployment. What it is remains to be seen. Classes are finally making a return early next year, midway through Season 3. The specialists that we've been deployed with will remain, but they will now be grouped into 4 different classes, pretty much akin to what they're labeled as now: Assault, Engineer, Support, and Recon. Crawford and Irish will be swapping classes, and Irish will get Crawford's passive trait. I've got another briefing coming out at the end of the month detailing how I think classes should be implemented in this conflict, so keep an eye out for that one when I post it. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on it. With these classes, we aren't having weapon restrictions as we'd had in conflicts past. Instead, each class will have some specialized training with specific weapons to make them more proficient with them. For instance, it's confirmed that the Recon class will be able to hold their breath longer when aiming with a sniper rifle. It remains to be seen what the other proficiencies will be. Of course, it wouldn't be a new season if the brass didn't dust off some old hardware and try to sell it to us as new. It's confirmed that we'll be getting access to the XM8 assault rifle from Bad Company 2 and the A91 from Battlefield 3. Hopefully they perform well right out of the box, but I doubt it. On the other hand, there is mention of increased Portal combat simulation content, so hopefully that means they'll finally be getting more maps, as that's been lacking. The biggest news aside from classes returning is that 2 of our battlefields will be seeing large changes much the same way that we've seen deployments on the Kaleidoscope Renewal and Orbital Fronts change. In this go-around, we'll be seeing some changes occur on Manifest in Singapore and on Breakaway in Antarctica. Manifest will see our initial deployment zones be closer to the action so that we don't have to get our cardio workouts in if we happen to miss a vehicle. The targeted areas that HQ wants us to hold against the enemy are also going to be closer together, putting more pressure on both you and the enemy to take and hold these objectives. The radar array atop the central hill has been heavily damaged, and so there will only be one viable position to attempt to occupy now instead of 2. Cranes have been needed elsewhere to help rebuild civilian infrastructure, so we'll be seeing fewer of those amongst the cargo containers, while we'll be seeing far more cover and lighting in these areas instead. Breakaway at this point might as well be an entirely new front. The entire oil rig platform is being repositioned to be closer to the town and the glacier, allowing for it to be more easily accessible. There will also be new paths to access the oil rig, as well as increased cover and pathways on the oil rig once you reach it. The town near the oil rig has also been reinforced with more cover and adjusted target areas for capture. The glacier seems to have melted significantly since this conflict started, as the crack in the glacier is much larger than before, exposing previously covered rock formations. Amongst these formations you can also find a downed condor that HQ wants to prioritize as an objective to hold from the enemy. It could hold vital information about this conflict. Other than these changes, DICE up at HQ has remained fairly tight-lipped about any further details. We are of course going to see a new specialist being employed by the brass to assist in our efforts in this conflict. There's currently zero information on who this is or what they do. The same lack of information goes for the new battle pass and that we'll have access to at the barracks. However, HQ has mentioned that the newest front may be fairly close to home for DICE. It looks like we'll be deploying solely infantry to a metropolitan area in Switzerland. Could HQ be in danger from the dark market? Could there be some threat that the brass wants dealt with? It remains to be seen, but I'm expecting we'll be seeing a front very similar to Operation Metro or Operation Locker from conflicts past. Now, soldiers, the favorite part of these briefings, giving you my honest thoughts and opinions. Waiving enlistment fees for a limited time is fine, but when I see that PlayStation warriors have literally twice the free deployment time of Xbox soldiers, that is some bullshit. Like I said before, DICE, quick sucking off Sony, they've already finished. I'm looking at the post-Season 4 content with some cautious speculation. The wording of the briefing from HQ was just too specifically worded to be vague. There was no mention of further seasons, more maps, or weapons, just that there was something they'd be working on. I, for one, am not confident in this. I feel that after Season 4 we'll have a round of Battlefield reworks for all the new fronts we've gotten through the first 4 seasons, some quality of life improvements, and that's probably it. I highly doubt there will be anything substantial after the 4th season. All this briefing does is calm the concerns of the community so they don't bail from this conflict before it ends. The return of classes will be interesting, but at the same time a bad move. Given my cynicism towards future expansions on this conflict, I'm looking at this as classes are being reintroduced over 3/4 of the way through the lifetime of this conflict. It may be too little too late, and it's going to alienate all the non-veterans that this conflict was built from the ground up for. They may be trying to pull back in veterans of conflicts past like myself, but they're going to lose many of the new recruits who simply won't like the restrictions. Vault weapons can suck an egg. While we don't have a full picture of Season 3 yet, I couldn't give a fuck less about old hardware being reintroduced to this conflict. Give me new creative weapons, not old dusty guns. Again, hopefully the new combat simulation content will include more maps from conflicts past. The Map Reworks honestly look fantastic, as they always have. This is the one area where I have no complaints. My least favorite front, Breakaway, looks like it'll finally be fun to deploy to, and the manifest changes sound like they'll finally be making that front more close quarters as it was advertised. Hopefully they can roll these changes out faster than expected. The new Battle Pass progression mostly doesn't interest me, at least not yet. The new specialist is going to throw a wrench into the newly proposed classes, as now one class will have more specialists than any other. Whether or not that will factor into the minute-to-minute gunfights remains to be seen. The new map sounds like it should be what Stranded should have been, but again, without further details and without your CO getting first-hand experience with it, it remains to be seen. And so that is all, Warriors. That concludes my coverage of the newest dev update that we were provided with on November 10th. There are a great many changes that are coming with Season 3 and beyond. However, in my humble opinion, this is how this conflict should have launched. It's honestly embarrassing that after a year, this conflict has finally reached a state that would be an acceptable starting point. They've taken too long to do well here, and I'm afraid the ship has sailed on this conflict. I will be seeing it through to the end, but I don't think that even the reintroduction of classes will bring in the veteran numbers HQ is hoping for. All that remains to be seen, however. Do you agree with my assessment? How do you feel about this update? Permission to speak freely is granted. And so if you felt your CO did an adequate job today in this briefing, then be sure to leave me a like, super thanks, or subscription to show the brass at HQ that I could do with a larger audience. So I've been your CO, Major Doodleman 149, and until next time, you are all dismissed!